Hello one and all, Silk Surge here, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. That's right, I'm trying something I haven't done for nearly 20 years, and that's painting Warhammer miniatures. Specifically, I'll be painting Warriors of Minas Tirith from the Lord of the Rings Middle-earth series, and boy, let me tell you, I'm feeling like this may well become a renewed passion of mine. So as always, sit back, grab yourself a cuppa, get comfortable, and let's get into the first instalment of my new series, Rediscovering Miniatures. If you are new to my channel, then hello and welcome. Please stick around, leave a like, comment and subscribe for more content. I'm going to start off by saying this is my first video I've ever uploaded to YouTube using an actual camera and not just simply doing a game capture, so please forgive me if the quality doesn't quite hit the mark. Also, I just wanted to say that I'll be moving away from producing more World of Warcraft content for now. I may well return in the future, but until then, I'm going to be focusing my creativity on new interests. So today will be the first installment of my new miniature series. The primary aim here is simply to have fun. This series is most definitely not a video guide on how to properly paint miniatures. Rather, this is me sharing in my rediscovered passion for the art and a catalogue of the learning process. If you're also new, then join me and see if we can learn a thing or two together, or if you're a miniature painting god, then please stick around and share your wisdom with me. I beg you, I need your help. In terms of equipment, I use the top of a Tupperware to mix paints and so forth, and a mug of water to clean the brushes. For this video I purchased some Rock Ninja paintbrushes, which I'm actually quite impressed with. They're really precise, durable and comfortable. I also got some craft knives and an A5 cutting mat. You may notice in the corner of this shot that I was enjoying a nice tumbler of whiskey on the rocks when doing this video, so if this turns out looking quite bad, I can at least use alcohol as a convenient scapegoat. Anyway, as you can see, I also acquired some Dungeons & Dragons war paints, which, yes, I recognise these aren't Games Workshop branded, nor are they specifically tailored towards Warriors of Minas Tirith, but they're acrylics and they were affordable and had roughly some of the colour palettes I was looking for, and why waste good paint on what will be my first attempt getting back into Warhammer. On a slightly separate note, the paints came with a rather cool little knight or warrior of some kind, which looks pretty cool. He's wielding some sort of Zweihander, and I think likely I'll paint this guy in the future. So then it was time to stop dawdling and actually begin painting. For my first model, I chose the shielded warrior because he was mostly assembled and looked like he would be fairly easy to paint. After removing him from the mould and cutting away any excess plastic, I prepared my primer coat. As you can see, I used the grey primer provided. I then began the rather relaxing process of applying the primer. Before filming, I did a lot of research on how to apply a primer coat using just a brush and got a lot of conflicting information. Most people use spray paint, but that wasn't an option for me at the time. One YouTuber I trust did say you can use a wider brush and don't need to thin the paint. You can simply just apply the primer directly and make the layer thin by over-brushing. Let me know in the comments below if you have any tips on this stage of the process. My immediate impression was that these guys are small, very small, far smaller than I remembered. I guess I'm going to have to work on having a steady hand. After 10 minutes or so of painting, the primer coat was complete, so I put it to one side to dry and began planning what my next step would be. After doing more research and watching some videos, I decided I needed to get the base coats done first. This is a step I never did when I was younger, and after researching it, I now see these are really important steps. I decided that I would do the metallic coat first, mainly because it was the outermost piece of clothing in a lot of cases, and also because it was actually quite hard to tell what was meant to be armour and what was meant to be clothing. I prepared the metallic paint for the base coat. As you can see, I was using a mithril silver paint. This got me thinking that I actually don't know what metal type Gondorian soldiers wore, according to Tolkien. Was it simply steel, or was it a different type of fantasy-based material? Knowing how Tolkien portrays Gondor, it could well be a more exotic metal. If you do happen to know, please let me know in the comments. I then saw on a video I was watching that it was wise to dry brush metal areas so that it gives it a more textured and used look. I never dry brushed before, nor have I ever applied base layers on top of a primer, so this all was rather new to me. I did my own interpretation of what all this new information meant. The important thing was, I was having fun. How bad could it be? I also was trying not to get too upset if I accidentally covered areas of the model which weren't metallic, because I knew I could always paint over them. I then used the flesh coloured paint to cover the face area, which from what I can tell is the only area on this model that has exposed skin. With this coat, I had seen from multiple sources that it's wise to thin the paint. This allows for the coat to get into all the areas of the face which are really small and fiddly and hard to access. It seemed to work a treat and is clearly where I used to go wrong when I was younger. I never thinned the paint, so faces were always aggressively pink and all the details became obscured. Moving on, it was time to create the base layer for the cloth areas covering the arms, waist and legs of the warrior. This is where I started to feel the impact of the limited range of colours available to me. Whilst the blue seemed like a good choice, it was rather garish and I'm not yet confident enough in my abilities to be certain that I could mix it into another colour and then replicate the same colour when I come back to doing the highlights later on. So I went with the Abyssal Black. As soon as the brush touched the figure, I wasn't over the moon with the look, it was very striking. However, as I applied more of the black to the cloth areas, it started to look a bit more natural. After applying the first section of the black base coat, I then found myself going through a vicious circle. I was overcorrecting back and forth along the waist area, trying to make the plate armour look realistic on top of cloth material. In the end, I conceded and accepted I would have to fix this later on. I was just about to experiment with adding additional lighter coats to the fabric area when the white acrylic bottle decided to malfunction and explode everywhere. Yes, I followed the instructions, and yes, I also then proceeded to squeeze it really hard, and yes, I regret everything. Moving swiftly on. Now, I had to fast forward a bit here because I sadly don't have the skills yet to film the really fiddly areas in front of the camera. This is just legitimately difficult. I have a newfound respect to all these YouTubers I've been watching recently who paint absolutely amazing miniatures all whilst filming themselves live. It's just truly astounding. As you can see, I painted the outside of the shield and wow, that was hard. Suddenly I think I might have made a foolish choice going with the shield warrior first. The details of the tree emblem are so darn fiddly. This will be something I imagine I will need to revisit in the future. I then found myself wondering what area to paint next. I knew I needed to tackle the areas of leather, such as the belt and scabbard, but I also knew I needed to make a decision on the sword, specifically what colour to use on the handguard. I also just needed a moment to take this all in. I was getting huge nostalgia and I suddenly felt transported back to my youth when things were just simpler. I felt relaxed and I hope you guys feel the same watching this video now. I then prepared the Bugbear Brown paint. I realised that this was the only brown I had and it made sense to use this on the interior of the shield and on the leather areas mentioned previously. What instantly struck me was how thin this paint was in comparison to the others. My brush was dry as a bone and it still struggled to cover the grey primer coat underneath. I figured this wouldn't be that much of a problem since I could always just add another coat later on if needs be. After applying the first coat to the shield, I then began to tackle the leather areas. This, again, was really fiddly. I thought I was doing okay filming and painting these areas at the same time, and then, right at the end, I got a rather large drop of the Bugbear Brown on the chest plate of the figure. Fortunately, I managed to dab most of this off with a tissue. Again, I had to skip some bits here because it got rather intricate. As you can see, I cleaned up the face of the shield as best I could. I also then painted the guard of the sword. Yellow was all I had available to me. I also touched up the backs of the legs because I hadn't really done anything with them thus far, and as rough as it is, I think I've finally completed my base coat. I would also say that this is technically complete in that all the required colours are now present on the figure, just the quality is questionable. So without further ado, it's time to look at the final product. So as you can see, I'm very much still a beginner, but I'm still happy with how it turned out, and I still have to tell myself this is still just the base coat. I'm going to be adding more details as we go along. And I think that about concludes the end of episode 1. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Silk out.